so many of these class actions are brought for supposed breaches by directors. They will sue the directors, they will sue the company, which makes it incidentally very hard to get directors these days. They have to pay enormous insurance fees against this kind of action. I'd say in many cases vexatious action. But they look at what supposedly hasn't been declared, the tiniest thing they'll go through and they'll pick up on it. No real harm done, no real injustice, but they're looking for a loophole on which to hang one of these class action claims, aren't they?
I mean, do we really want to be in an economy that's so litigious now that otherwise productive capital from companies is being diverted towards defending these actions? In recent times, since the explosion of class actions in this country, directors and officers' insurance has gone up by 600%. In this environment, if you're an ASX 200 listed company, you've got a 1 in 10 chance of being hauled before the courts in these actions. And the average claim is between $50 and $75 million. Now, over the last few years, companies have progressively sought to just settle these things, get them out of the way and move on. But it's now that companies are actually standing up to these litigation funders and taking it through the whole court process, saying that these actions are speculative and just seeking profits. And they've had enough. And we've recently seen in the courts that when these class actions do go through to settlement by a judge, then they're actually starting to lose. So litigation funders were always seeking to profit just on the settlement. And I'll just go back to another argument that the litigation funders put about why they have to receive such excessive profits is because they say, Nick, that there's enormous risk involved in this. Well, Omni Bridgeway has an 80+% success rate, and also these litigation funders have within them after the event insurance, which indemnifies them against paying the full damages if they do lose. So, these litigation funders, again, like Omni Bridgeway, they're making internal rates of return over just 1 to 2 years of hundreds of percent based on this notion that it's really risky for them and therefore they should be entitled to a large pool of sums. Well, no, that's just not the case. And as you said, Nick, in this country, it's not something that we should be proud of, but it's the environment that we're in created by these guys. And the current government removed, in one of their first actions, all meaningful oversight of litigation funders.
So we're almost out of time, James, but before we go, I'd like you to fill in one other final piece of the jigsaw. Why is a Labor government supposedly there to help the ordinary people? Why have they loosened up these regulations again in a way that is enormous benefit to big law firms and big funding firms who fund this action? Why have they done that?
Well, Nick, it turns into an absolute bonanza for the industry, for the lawyers there. You know, one of the biggest donors to the Labor Party is Maurice Blackburn. One of the biggest beneficiaries of the relaxing of these laws is Maurice Blackburn, Slater and Gordon. The vested interests that control the Labor Party, the union movement and the Labor lawyers, are having an absolute meal on these lax regulations that Labor continue to implement.
So, as usual, follow the money if you want to understand Labor policy on climate change and energy, on legal affairs and anything to do with workplace relations. It all comes down to their big donors, right? Are we being too cynical, James?
Absolutely not, Nick. It's plain and simple. The people who benefit most from this are mega donors to the Labor Party.